My brother waited until Thanksgiving dinner to tell 23 relatives that I had stolen from our dying parents. He said it while I was still wearing our mother's apron and carrying the turkey I had cooked. His wife turned her phone toward me, pretending she was recording family memories. Then he slid a cardboard box across the table and said, "Pack whatever is yours. You're out by Monday." Someone at the far end of the table whispered my name, but no one defended me. My brother smiled and added, "You've lived off mom and dad long enough." That was when I placed a small blue flash drive beside his wine glass. Before I leave, I said, "You should play the last video they made." His face changed before he even touched it, because he knew our parents had spent their final months documenting which child had taken from them and which child had kept them alive. My name is Natalie Brooks. I was 39 years old that Thanksgiving, and until that night, I had spent most of my life confusing being needed with being loved. The house where we were eating stood on 12 acres outside Hendersonville, North Carolina, at the edge of an apple orchard my parents had built from almost nothing. The place was called Maple Hollow. It had a white farmhouse, a weathered red barn, a small farm store, and rows of apple trees that rolled down the hill towards the Blue Ridge Mountains. To the rest of the family, Maple Hollow was a beautiful inheritance. To me, it was the place where my mother threw up after chemotherapy, where my father learned to walk again after a stroke, and where I slept with my phone on my chest because either one of them might need me before sunrise. My older brother Ryan preferred the version that looked good in photographs. Ryan was 43, handsome in the polished, expensive way that made people assume he knew what he was doing. He owned a remodeling company in Charlotte called Brooks Heritage Renovations. His website showed him standing in kitchens he had not designed, wearing a hard hat, without a mark on it, talking about craftsmanship, family values, and preserving what mattered. He was excellent at preserving appearances. When our mother Linda was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, Ryan posted a black and white photograph of them holding hands. The caption said, "No one fights alone." He stayed at the hospital for 42 minutes. I stayed for 6 days. At the time, I was a freelance commercial photographer. I shot restaurant menus, boutique hotels, and regional ad campaigns. It was not glamorous, but I had built a stable life in Charlotte. I had a small apartment, loyal clients, and enough savings for a down payment on a condo. Then Mom's treatment got worse. Dad had a stroke, and everything changed in the space of 4 months. I moved back to Maple Hollow. I told myself it would be temporary. I set up a desk in the corner of the farm store and edited photographs between medication alarms, physical therapy exercises, and calls from insurance companies. I learned how to flush a port, how to help my father shower without making him feel helpless, and how to tell from the way my mother breathed whether a night would be manageable or terrifying. Ryan handled things from a distance. That was his phrase. Handling things from a distance meant sending long group texts at midnight with instructions for what I should do the next morning. It meant asking me to photograph Dad looking cheerful so he could update relatives. It meant arriving on Sunday in a clean SUV, hugging everyone where neighbors could see him, and leaving before anyone needed help lifting Dad into bed. He sent flowers so often that Mom once looked at a new arrangement and said, "I wish your brother knew we can't eat lilies." I laughed because she did. Then I went into the pantry and cried. My parents were not poor. Maple Hollow had been good to them. The orchard store sold cider pies, jams, and gift baskets. The barn hosted small weddings during the warmer months. They had retirement savings and a nearly paid-off mortgage. But illness eats money in quiet, humiliating bites. There were medications, insurance delayed. A ramp had to be built. The downstairs bathroom needed to be changed. The barn roof leaked after a storm. The farm lost an entire fall wedding season because Mom was too sick to manage bookings and Dad could not safely operate equipment. I used my savings. At first, it was a few $1,000s for the bathroom, then $12,000 for the roof, then payroll for the 2 orchard workers who had families depending on them, then the mortgage payment when Dad's automatic transfer bounced because Ryan had convinced him to move money into what he called a temporary growth account. By the end of that year, I had put more than $200,000 into my parents' care and Maple Hollow. I never announced it. I did not post a photograph of the checks. I did not call relatives and ask them to admire me. They were my parents. The orchard was their life. I believed helping was what family did when no one was watching. Ryan believed helping only counted if someone was watching. Our childhood had prepared us for that difference. Ryan was the child who came home with trophies. I was the child who remembered permission slips. When he scored the winning goal, Dad lifted him onto his shoulders. When I stayed up sewing a costume for the school play after Mom got the flu, everyone said Natalie is so dependable. Ryan was allowed to shine. I was trained to disappear behind whatever needed to be done. I did not resent him when we were young. I admired him. He could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with invitations, promises, and phone numbers. I thought confidence was a kind of goodness. It took me nearly 40 years to understand that confidence without responsibility can become a weapon. The first time I realized Ryan was not merely absent but dangerous happened 8 months before Dad died. I found him in the farm office on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Mom was asleep upstairs after treatment. Dad was at physical therapy. Ryan was sitting behind Dad's desk with 3 drawers open and a pile of folders beside him. "What are you doing?" I asked. He did not startle. Ryan rarely startled. He simply looked up and smiled as if I had walked into his office. "Getting organized." Dad's records are already organized. They're organized in a way only he understands. I stepped closer and saw a folder labeled Maple Hollow Loans. Under it was a folder containing the deed tax records and old photographs from when my parents bought the property. Ryan closed the drawer. "Dad asked me to review options," he said. "What options?" "For the property." "He can't run this place anymore." "You definitely can't." I stared at him. For almost a year, I had been managing workers' orders as repairs and weekend customers while caring for both parents. Ryan had not learned the name of the woman who had baked pies for us since 2009. "What do you mean I can't?" He leaned back in Dad's chair. "Natalie, you take pictures of salads for local restaurants. You're not a business owner. And you haven't been here enough to know what this business needs." His smile disappeared. "You need to be careful," he said. "Living here has made you think you have a claim." "I'm their daughter." "So am I. You're their son." "You know what I mean." I did know. Ryan had always believed being the son made him the natural center of every family decision, even when he was nowhere near the consequences. I asked whether he was trying to sell Maple Hollow. He stood and came around the desk. "Mom is dying. Dad is half there. The orchard is losing money. I am thinking about reality. Dad is not half there. He had a stroke. He still knows exactly what is happening." Ryan lowered his voice. "You don't have a husband. You don't have children. You put your life on hold and moved into their house. Don't turn that into some heroic career." The cruelty of the sentence made me silent. He mistook silence for surrender. He picked up his keys and walked past me. At the door, he turned back. "People are starting to ask questions, Nat. They wonder why you control every appointment, every password, every conversation." No one had asked him that. He was warning me about the story he planned to tell. I just did not understand it yet. After Ryan left, I sat in Dad's chair and looked at the open folders. One photograph was missing. It had been taken the summer Maple Hollow opened its first roadside stand. Dad was holding a crooked wooden sign. Mom was laughing beside him, pregnant with me. Ryan, 4 years old, stood in front with apple juice on his shirt. Dad kept that photograph in every office he ever used. I found it 2 weeks later on Ryan's company page. He had cropped me out of Mom's arms and added the caption, "Brooks men have protected this land for 2 generations." When I confronted him, he said his marketing assistant had made a mistake. He did not remove it. That was Ryan's favorite kind of lie, when small enough that objecting made you look unreasonable. Around the same time, relatives began calling me with oddly similar questions. Aunt Carol asked whether Dad was still making his own decisions. My cousin Ben wanted to know if I had given up my apartment permanently. Mom's sister asked gently whether I was keeping receipts for groceries I bought with the farm card. I knew where the questions came from, but I still made excuses for Ryan. "He's worried," I told myself. "He feels guilty. He doesn't know how to handle sickness." I translated his behavior into softer language because the truth required me to admit that my own brother was preparing people to distrust me. Mom saw it before I did. One night, after Ryan had posted another smiling photograph from a 10-minute visit, she asked me to sit on the edge of her bed. She looked small beneath the quilt. Her hair had started growing back in soft gray curls. A half-finished cup of tea sat on the nightstand. "Your brother called," she said. "What did he want?" "To know whether your name is on the house." My stomach tightened. "What did you tell him?" "That I was tired and he should ask his father." Mom watched my face. "Natalie, stop protecting him from what he is doing." "I'm not protecting him." "Yes, you are. You explain him to everyone. You explain him to yourself." I looked down at my hands. "He's your son, and you are my daughter." The answer came so quickly that I started crying before I understood why. Mom reached for me. Listen to me, she said. Ryan knows how to make people feel cruel for noticing his cruelty. That does not make you cruel. I wanted to believe her. But families do not usually break in one dramatic moment. They train you over years to call the breaking normal. 3 weeks later, Mom was back in the hospital. Ryan arrived wearing a navy blazer because he had come directly from a client meeting. He kissed her forehead, took a photograph of their hands, and stepped into the hallway to answer a call. He never came back into the room. Mom died just after 2 a.m. I was holding one hand. Dad was holding the other. Ryan's photograph went online before sunrise. Rest peacefully, Mom, he wrote. I was with you until the end. I stared at the post in the hospital parking lot while Dad sat in the passenger seat too shocked to speak. The lie was so unnecessary that it frightened me. Ryan had not merely abandoned the truth, he had begun replacing it in real time. At the funeral, he gave the eulogy. He spoke beautifully about Mom's pies, her Christmas traditions, and the way she made every person feel welcome. People cried. He cried too. I do not doubt that some part of him loved her. But grief did not make him honest. He said, in her final months, our whole family came together around her. I sat in the front row with bruises on my arms from lifting her. Ryan's wife, Madison, had created a photo display in the church lobby. There were 37 photographs of Ryan with Mom. There were 2 of me. In one, I was mostly hidden behind a hospital chair. In the other, I was carrying a tray. After the service, relatives hugged Ryan and told him how proud Mom must have been of the man he had become. Aunt Carol squeezed my shoulder and said, You're lucky you could live at home during all this. Lucky. I had lost my clients, my savings, my sleep, and then my mother. But because the sacrifice happened inside the family home, people called it free housing. That afternoon, while guests ate casseroles in the barn, I saw Ryan speaking to a man in a tan coat near the apple trees. The man pointed toward the lower field and the farmhouse. Ryan nodded. I walked over. Who is this? Ryan's expression tightened for half a second. This is Clay Mercer. He develops boutique vacation properties. Clay offered his hand. Beautiful land, he said. Your brother has a real vision for it. My brother doesn't own it. The silence between us was brief but revealing. Ryan laughed. Natalie's had a long week. Clay withdrew his hand. We're only talking possibilities. Not today, I said. Not at our mother's funeral. Ryan waited until Clay walked away. Then he grabbed my elbow. You embarrassed me. You brought a developer to Mom's funeral. He was already in the area. You were showing him the property. I was thinking ahead. Dad is still alive. And Dad needs realistic options. I pulled my arm away. You mean you need money? His face hardened. For the first time, the charm vanished completely. You have no idea what it costs to run a real company. You mean your company? You think changing bandages makes you qualified to control $1 million property? I'm not trying to control it. Of course you are. You moved in. You made yourself essential. Now everyone has to ask you for access. Access to our parents. Access to everything. He said it loudly enough that 2 relatives turned toward us. Then he walked away, leaving me standing there as if I had caused the scene. That night, Dad asked me to bring him the old metal cash box from the office closet. It was dented green and heavy. He had used it in the farm store before they bought a modern register. Inside were notebooks, receipts, letters, and a stack of envelopes secured with rubber bands. Dad's speech was slower after the stroke, especially when he was tired, but his mind was clear. Your brother came into my office, he said. I know. He took papers. What papers? Loan papers, notes. Did you lend him money? Dad closed his eyes. Too much. How much? He held up 3 fingers, then paused. 300. He nodded. 300,000. Another nod. I felt cold. Ryan's company had looked successful. His social media showed new trucks, renovated kitchens, charity golf events, and a lake house he called an investment property. Why would you give him that much? Dad looked ashamed. He said payroll. Said families would lose jobs. Your mother begged me. Did he pay any of it back? Dad shook his head. Then he pointed toward the notebooks. I opened the top one. Dad had written dates, amounts, and short explanations in his blocky handwriting. Ryan $40,000 payroll emergency. Ryan $65,000 supplier dispute. Ryan $28,000 tax problem. Promise Linda last request. The entries continued. There were also records of every payment I had made. Natalie roof repair $11,840. Natalie March payroll $18,600. Natalie medical equipment $7,225. Besides several entries Dad had written, She will not take repayment yet. My throat tightened. Why did you write all this down? Dad looked toward the closed office door. Because he changes stories. That was the first time Dad said it aloud. Over the next several months, he showed me more. Ryan had persuaded him to sign a line of credit for business equipment, then use part of the money for a down payment on a mountain condo. He had charged personal expenses to the orchard account and labeled them repairs. He had asked Dad to sign a letter saying Ryan had managed Maple Hollow during Mom's illness. Dad refused. Ryan sent the letter again with different wording. Dad refused again. Then Ryan began telling people Dad was confused. Dad did not confront him publicly. At first, that made me angry. Why are you letting him do this? I asked one evening. Dad sat at the kitchen table turning Mom's wedding ring between his fingers. Because if I accuse him before I am ready, he will learn what I know. This is not one of your shop projects. He's your son. I know. His voice broke on the last word. Dad had taught industrial arts at the county high school for 34 years. He was not a government auditor or a wealthy executive. He was a patient man who could look at a warped board and know exactly where the pressure had been applied. He understood people the same way. A crack tells you where the strain was, he said. It does not tell you who leaned on it. What are you waiting for? The truth to hold its own weight. I did not understand what he meant. Not then. After Mom died, caring for Dad became more difficult. Grief made him quiet. His right hand shook. Some mornings, he refused breakfast because the empty chair across from him made eating feel like betrayal. Ryan visited less. But online, he became the grieving son who was stepping up to protect the family legacy. Madison began posting photographs from Maple Hollow as though she and Ryan lived there. She staged their 2 children in the orchard with baskets. She referred to the barn as the future home of Brooks family gatherings. She announced a holiday cider event without asking me, then complained publicly that certain people were resisting progress. I canceled the event because Dad was recovering from pneumonia and could not tolerate hundreds of visitors outside his bedroom. Ryan told the family I had shut everyone out. The text messages came almost immediately. Aunt Carol, your father needs joy, not isolation. Cousin Ben Ryan says you won't let him help. Madison, the kids are heartbroken. This was supposed to honor Linda. Not one of them asked whether Dad could breathe. That was the pattern. Ryan created an image. I handled the reality. Then the image judged me for failing to look beautiful enough. Dad died the following September. It happened on a cool morning when fog still covered the lower orchard. I had made oatmeal. He had taken 3 bites and asked me to open the back door because he wanted to smell the apples. He looked toward the hills and said, "Your mother would complain they're late this year." I told him Mom complained every year. He smiled. Then he reached for my hand and said, "Do not let keeping peace cost you your name." Those were his last clear words. He died that afternoon in the downstairs bedroom with sunlight moving across the quilt Mom had made. Ryan arrived 2 hours later. He hugged me in the driveway while Madison filmed the children running toward the house. Then he asked where Dad's phone was. Not whether I had eaten, not whether Dad had been afraid, not what his final words were. His phone. I said I did not know. Ryan walked past me and searched the bedroom. At the funeral home, he took control of everything. He selected the casket, approved the flowers, and wrote the obituary before I saw it. The obituary described him as Tom's devoted son and partner in preserving Maple Hollow. It described me as his daughter Natalie, who resided nearby. I had lived in the same house, slept beside Dad's hospital bed, and carried his final breath in my chest. Resided nearby. When I asked Ryan to correct it, he sighed. Can we not make Dad's obituary about your need for recognition? That sentence did something to me. For years, I had avoided asking for credit because I thought love should not keep score. Ryan had turned that silence into permission to erase me. I looked at him across the funeral director's desk and said, "Correct it." He blinked. I had never used that tone with him. Madison put a hand on his arm. Ryan just added that she cared for him. He stared at me for several seconds, then changed the line to Natalie returned home during Tom's final year. Even then, he could not write the word care. At Dad's service, Ryan spoke again. This time I did not sit in the front row. I stood near the back beside Marisol Vega, the woman who had managed the farm store with Mom for 15 years. Marisol knew who had ordered medication, who had paid workers, and who had held Dad when the grief became too heavy for his legs. She leaned toward me while Ryan talked about continuing Dad's vision. "He never asked your father what the vision was," she whispered. After the service, Ryan announced a family Thanksgiving at Maple Hollow. Dad would want us together, he said. The room softened around him. People love the idea of healing when someone else would cook it, clean it, and absorb the cost. Ryan told everyone he would handle the arrangements. That meant he sent me a spreadsheet 3 days later. 30 guests, 2 turkeys, 4 pies, cider station, barn lights, children's table. He added a note at the bottom, "Natalie, please make sure the house is presentable. This is an important chance for the family to reconnect." I stared at the screen. Then I typed, "Who is paying for this?" His reply came instantly. "The farm, obviously." The farm had barely enough cash to make winter payroll. I wrote back, "No. If you invite them, you pay." He called. "You are being petty. I'm being responsible. This is our family's first holiday without mom and dad." "Yes. So why are you turning it into an event?" "Because someone has to keep us together." I almost laughed. Instead, I said, "You can have Thanksgiving here if you cover the food, help prepare and clean afterward." He agreed. He did none of those things. By Thanksgiving morning, I had bought the food, thawed the turkeys, cleaned the farmhouse, and set up tables in the dining room and enclosed porch. Marisol came over at 7 with sweet potato casserole. Her daughter brought folding chairs. Ryan arrived at noon carrying 1 bottle of wine and a bakery box with 6 cookies. Madison wore cream cashmere and immediately began rearranging the table for photographs. "You used Mom's blue plates," she asked. They were her favorite. They don't match the napkins. "They're plates, Madison." She smiled tightly and turned to her phone. Within minutes, she had posted a photograph of the farmhouse with the caption, "Keeping Linda and Tom's legacy alive. Family heals together." I was in the background carrying a trash bag. Around 3 relatives began arriving. They hugged Ryan first. He stood near the fireplace, receiving people as though he owned the house. He wore Dad's old watch, the one Dad had promised to Ryan years ago, and told stories about childhood harvests. I moved between the kitchen and dining room, refilling drinks and answering questions. "How are you holding up?" people asked. Before I could answer, they added, "Ryan says this has been hard on everyone." Aunt Carol brought a framed photograph for the family wall. It showed Ryan and Madison, their children, Mom and Dad, in the orchard. I had taken the picture. No one had asked me to step into it. Carol handed it to Ryan and said, "This belongs in the center." He placed it above the sideboard. At 4:30, I went upstairs to change out of my flower-covered shirt. When I returned, there was a folded place card at every seat. Mine was not beside the family. Ryan had placed me at the end of the enclosed porch near the door between a college-age cousin I barely knew and an empty chair used for coats. I picked up my card. Where am I supposed to sit? Madison looked concerned in the exaggerated way people do when they want witnesses. "Oh, Ryan thought you might need to get up and check the kitchen." I looked toward him. He did not meet my eyes. Something inside me became very still. I moved my place card to Mom's old seat. Madison whispered, "That's where Ryan planned to sit. Then Ryan can sit near the kitchen." When he saw the change, his jaw tightened. But guests were watching, so he smiled. Dinner began. For 10 minutes, everything looked normal. People passed potatoes. Children complained about green beans. Ben told a story about getting lost in the orchard when he was 8. Someone cried while describing Mom's pecan pie. Then Ryan stood and tapped his glass. "I want to say something before dessert." Madison lifted her phone. My body knew before my mind did. Every conversation stopped. Ryan rested both hands on the back of his chair. "This year has forced us to confront some painful things," he began. Mom and Dad's decline created confusion. It also created opportunities for certain people to take advantage. No one moved. He looked directly at me. "I tried to handle this privately, but Natalie has refused every attempt at transparency." I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Aunt Carol stared at her plate. Ryan continued, "Over the last 2 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars moved through this property. Farm income disappeared. Personal expenses were charged to Mom and Dad. Natalie lived here rent-free while presenting herself as their full-time caregiver." My heart pounded, but I did not interrupt. He had rehearsed this. Madison reached beneath the table and lifted a thick white binder. She placed it in front of him. Ryan opened it. "These are grocery bills, gas charges, home repairs, utilities, and payments made while Natalie controlled the house." He held up a page. "She even charged the farm for a new water heater. The old one flooded Dad's bedroom," I said. Ryan ignored me. He showed another page. $400 in takeout meals during Mom's hospital stays for Dad and the home nurses. See, he said to the table, there is always an explanation. The sentence was designed to make any answer sound like manipulation. He turned more pages. He had taken every cost of caring for our parents and relabeled it as a benefit to me. The ramp became home improvement. The downstairs shower became Natalie's renovation. The groceries I bought for Mom's restricted diet became personal food. The night nurse I hired after Dad fell became domestic assistance. Ryan had transformed caregiving into theft simply by changing the names. Then he reached beneath the table and lifted the cardboard box. He pushed it toward me. I think the healthiest thing is for Natalie to leave Maple Hollow. Several people inhaled at once. He kept speaking. Madison and I are prepared to take responsibility for the property. We have a plan to restore profitability, preserve the family name, and create something our children can inherit. I looked at the box. Inside were picture frames, 2 sweaters, Mom's recipe notebook, and the ceramic bird Dad had made for me in high school. Ryan had entered my room. He had packed pieces of my life while I cooked his dinner. You went through my things. This house belongs to the family. No, I said. It belonged to Mom and Dad. And now we need to make adult decisions. I have been making adult decisions here for 2 years. You've been making yourself impossible to remove. His voice sharpened. The performance was slipping. I asked, when did you pack this? This morning. While I was cooking, he gave a small shrug. You're good at being useful, Natalie. That doesn't mean you own the place. Aunt Carol whispered, Ryan, maybe this isn't the time. It is exactly the time, he said. We have enabled this long enough. Enabled. As though the family had supported me. As though they had not watched me lose everything and called the roof over my head payment enough. Ryan looked around the table, gathering courage from everyone's silence. Let's be honest. Natalie has no husband, no children, and barely any business left. Maple Hollow has become her identity. But Mom and Dad's property cannot be used to compensate for the life she failed to build. That was the sentence that made Marisol stand. You should be ashamed, she said. Ryan turned toward her. This is a family matter. I was here more than you. That does not make you family. No, Marisol said. Showing up did. Madison lowered her phone for the first time. Ryan's face reddened. He pointed at me. She has manipulated employees, isolated Dad, and made all of you afraid to ask questions. I looked around the table. Some relatives looked embarrassed. Others looked uncertain. A few looked almost relieved that someone had finally said aloud the story they had been privately invited to believe. I could have defended myself. I had bank statements upstairs. I had photographs. I had text messages. I had every calendar entry from every appointment. I could have listed the nights Ryan did not come, the promises he broke the money I spent. But Dad's last words came back to me. Do not let keeping peace cost you your name. So I removed Mom's apron. I folded it slowly and placed it on the table. Then I took the blue flash drive from my pocket and set it beside Ryan's wine glass. Before I pack anything, I said, play the video. Ryan stared at it. What video? The one Mom and Dad made. His eyes moved toward Madison. It was quick, but I saw it. So did Marisol. Ryan knew there was a video. He just did not know I had it. Dad had given the original to Marisol 3 months before he died. He had told her to keep it outside the house and give it to me only if Ryan tried to force a sale, remove me, or accuse me of taking from them. Marisol had brought it that afternoon. She had said, your father hoped you would never need this. I had not watched it. Not yet. I had been afraid that hearing their voices would break me. Now I understood they had not made it to break Ryan. They had made it so I would not have to break myself defending the truth. Ryan touched the flash drive but did not pick it up. This is ridiculous. Then play it. It could be edited. You haven't seen it. I know how you work. No, I said. You know how you work. The room went completely silent. Ben stood cross to the television and held out his hand. I'll play it. Ryan did not move. Ben took the drive. Madison said, maybe we should do this privately. I looked at her phone. You were recording when he accused me. Her face changed. You wanted witnesses, I said. Now you have them. Ben plugged the drive into the television. There was one file. Thanksgiving if needed. The date was 7 months before Dad died. Ben pressed play. For a moment, the screen was black. Then Mom appeared at the kitchen table. She wore a soft blue scarf over her hair. Dad sat beside her, thinner than I remembered, his right hand resting over hers. Behind them was the same window overlooking the orchard. My knees almost gave way. Mom looked into the camera. If you are watching this, she said, then Ryan has done something his father and I prayed he would choose not to do. No one at the table breathed. Ryan reached for the remote. Marisol stepped between him and the television. "Sit down," she said. And for once in his life, he did. Mom continued, "We want the truth said plainly because our family has spent too many years making plain truth sound impolite." Dad looked down at a notebook in front of him. "Mom said Natalie did not live off us." Her voice trembled, but the words did not. "We lived because of Natalie." I covered my mouth. Across the table, Aunt Carol began to cry. On the screen, Dad lifted the notebook. When Linda got sick, he said slowly, "Natalie paid for the downstairs bathroom, the roof, winter payroll, medical equipment, and 6 months of mortgage payments. She used money she saved for her own home." He read the amounts one by one. Not every receipt. Not every dollar. Just enough that the room could feel the size of what had been hidden. Mom looked into the camera again. "She refused repayment because she was afraid Ryan would say she was taking from us." Ryan shifted in his chair. "This is not the whole story," he said. No one answered him. Dad continued. "Ryan received money too." The television displayed a photograph of a handwritten page. Over 4 years, Dad said we gave or loaned Ryan $318,000 for his company. He told us employees would lose their jobs. He told us Madison might leave. He told us each emergency would be the last. Madison turned toward him. 318. Ryan did not look at her. Dad's voice came from the television. "Most was never repaid." Mom added, "He also used the orchard account for a condo deposit, a boat payment, and advertising for his business." "That's a lie," Ryan said. Marisol reached into her handbag and placed copies of the orchard statements on the table. "I printed them with Tom," she said. "He made me initial every page." Ryan stared at her. "You had no right." "Your father asked me." Dad turned another page on the screen. "We discovered Ryan had been telling relatives Natalie controlled our money. That was false. Natalie could pay household bills, but she could not move savings or borrow against the property. Ryan knew that." Mom's face tightened with anger. "He also asked us to sign a statement saying Natalie was unstable and had become dependent on Maple Hollow." Several relatives looked up sharply. Aunt Carol whispered, "He told me you were worried about her." Mom seemed to answer from the past. "We were worried about her. We were worried she would spend the rest of her life proving she was not selfish to people who benefited from her having no needs." That sentence reached into the deepest part of me. I had never heard my mother describe me so clearly. She continued, "We made mistakes with both our children. We praised Ryan for being impressive and Natalie for asking for nothing. One learned that love was applause. The other learned that love was service." Dad nodded. "We helped build this problem." Ryan shook his head. "This is emotional manipulation." The video kept playing. Dad explained what they had decided in simple terms. Months earlier, they had changed Maple Hollow's future. The farmhouse would remain my home if I wanted it. The orchard and barn would not be sold to a developer. Instead, Maple Hollow would become a small respite program for adults caring for sick parent spouses or disabled family members. During harvest season, it would still sell apples and cider. The barn would still host a limited number of weddings, but several weekends each year would be set aside for caregivers who needed rest meals, help organizing bills, and one quiet night when someone else listened for the phone. My parents had asked Marisol to oversee the store. They had asked me to direct the program, not because I had earned the inheritance by suffering. Mom was careful about that. "No child should have to purchase love with exhaustion," she said. "We are not rewarding Natalie for disappearing. We are giving her a place where she no longer has to." I started crying then. Not politely, not silently. The tears came from years of being praised for surviving things no one should have asked me to survive. Dad explained that Ryan had already received more than the value of the share they had once planned to leave him. They had offered him a simple choice. While Dad was alive, repay part of the money over time and participate honestly in the orchard, or accept that the earlier money was his portion and step away from Maple Hollow. Ryan had refused to sign anything. He had shouted at Dad. He had called me a parasite. Then he had taken several pages from the farm office, believing he had removed the only record of the money. But Dad had copies with Marisol. Mom leaned closer to the camera. "Ryan, if you are watching this, you may feel humiliated." Ryan's face went pale. "You will be tempted to say, Natalie did this to you. She did not." Dad said, "A person is not attacked by the truth, merely because he preferred the lie." No one looked at Ryan now. They looked at the table, the walls, their hands, anywhere but at the man who had invited them to witness my humiliation. Mom's final message was for me. Natalie, forgiveness does not require you to keep giving someone access to the part of you they keep hurting. I pressed both hands to my face. You can love your brother, she said, and still refuse to be the place where he hides from consequences. The video ended. For several seconds, the television showed only our reflection in the dark screen. 23 relatives. A half-eaten Thanksgiving dinner. My mother's empty chair. My brother sitting at the head of a table that had never belonged to him. The first person to speak was Madison. She did not raise her voice. She simply asked, "Did you use money from our home equity account to repay your father?" Ryan stared at her. "This is not about us. That is not an answer. We can discuss it later." "Did you?" He rubbed his forehead. "I moved money around during a difficult quarter." Madison pushed her chair back. "You told me the condo deposit came from a client bonus." Ryan looked toward me. There are explanations for all of this. I almost laughed because he had mocked me with those exact words minutes earlier. Aunt Carol stood. "Natalie," she said, "I am sorry." I nodded, but I did not rescue her from the discomfort. She had believed Ryan because his story required less from her. If I was a freeloader, then no one had to ask why they had left me alone. Ben removed the framed family photograph from above the sideboard. He looked at me. "You took this picture, didn't you?" "Yes." He set it face down. Ryan stood so suddenly, his chair struck the wall. "This is what she wanted," he said. "She wanted everyone against me." I looked at him across the table. "I cooked you Thanksgiving dinner. You had that video ready. Dad had it ready. You brought Marisol here to ambush me." Marisol came to help me cook. He turned to the family. "You are all being manipulated by a dead man who was grieving and a woman who controlled what he heard." Marisol slammed her palm on the table. "I heard you ask him to sell the lower field while he was still learning to hold a fork." Ryan pointed at her. "Stay out of this." "No," she said. "You told Natalie I was not family." "That is true. I am not family, which means I had no obligation to come. I came anyway." That silenced him. Ryan reached for the flash drive. I took it first. His eyes narrowed. "What are you going to do now? Post it online. Destroy my business." "Number." He seemed almost disappointed. I said, "I'm going to keep it because it is the last time I heard Mom's voice." The anger left his face for one unguarded second. Beneath it was fear, not grief. Fear of losing control of the story. He lowered his voice. "Natalie, we should talk privately. You had the chance to speak privately. You chose an audience. I was trying to protect the family. You packed my bedroom into a box. You don't understand the pressure I'm under." That pressure did not write those posts. It did not call our relatives. It did not enter my room. It did not put my place card by the door. His mouth tightened. "So, what, you're cutting me off?" I looked around Maple Hollow. At Mom's plates. At Dad's old watch on Ryan's wrist. At the people who had accepted his version of me because it was delivered confidently. Then I looked back at my brother. Yes, the word surprised both of us. Ryan laughed once sharply. "You can't be serious." "I am. We are the only family we have left." "No," I said. "You are the only brother I have. That is not the same as being safe." He called me dramatic. He called me ungrateful. He said Mom and Dad had poisoned me against him. Then when none of those words pulled me back into my old role, he said the one thing he had always used as a final lock. "You'll regret this when you're alone." I looked at the table. Marisol stood beside me. Her daughter was collecting plates. Ben was helping Aunt Carol into her coat. Madison had taken their children upstairs. I realized I had been loneliest when Ryan had full access to me. "I have been alone," I said. "I was just too busy taking care of everyone to notice." He left without dessert. Madison drove separately. Before she went, she removed Dad's watch from Ryan's coat pocket. He had taken it off during the argument and placed it beside my hand. "I think this should stay here," she said. I did not ask what would happen to their marriage. For once, I did not volunteer to manage the damage. The relatives left slowly. Some apologized. Some avoided me. A few tried to soften their role. "We didn't know." Ryan sounded so worried. "We thought you wanted privacy." I listened without comforting them. Then I said the sentence I had never allowed myself to say. "You could have asked me." No one had an answer. After the last car disappeared down the driveway, I found the cardboard box on the porch. My sweaters were damp from the cold air. Mom's recipe notebook was bent at one corner. I carried everything inside. Then I sat in her chair and watched the video again. This time I stopped listening for proof. I listened to their voices. Mom teased Dad for shuffling papers too loudly. Dad forgot what sentence came next and muttered, "Well, Linda, you wrote too much." Mom rolled her eyes. They looked tired. They looked frightened. They looked like two parents trying very late to repair what they had taught their children about love. Near the end, after they thought the recording had stopped, Dad asked, "Do you think she'll believe us?" Mom answered, "Not right away." "Why not?" "Because we spent her whole life telling her goodness meant she should need less." Dad was quiet. Then he said, "I hope she learns." I closed the laptop and cried until the farmhouse was silent. That night was not the night I won Maple Hollow. It was the night I stopped volunteering to lose myself. The months that followed were not clean or easy. Ryan did not apologize. He sent long messages. At first, they were angry. "You made me look like a criminal." Dad was not competent when that video was made. Marisol has always hated me. Then they became strategic. "Let's not let one terrible night destroy the family. We can create a shared management plan. You are not prepared to run the property alone." Finally, they became sentimental. Mom would hate this silence. The kids missed the orchard. Dad would want us to forgive each other. He never wrote, "I lied about you." He never wrote, "I am sorry I packed your room." He never wrote, "I used our parents' illness as a chance to take what I wanted." Every message asked me to reduce the consequence without requiring him to name the harm. I did not answer. Instead, I blocked his number. That frightened me more than confronting him at Thanksgiving. For weeks, I woke up expecting punishment. I expected relatives to call me cruel. Some did. Aunt Carol said, "He is still your brother." I said, "That is why he had so many chances." She did not mention it again. Ryan tried to go around me. He emailed Marisol about taking over the farm store. She forwarded it to me with one sentence. "He still thinks a closed door is a negotiation." He contacted the developer Clay Mercer and claimed the family was reconsidering the property. Clay called me. I told him Maple Hollow was not for sale and never would be. He apologized for appearing at Mom's funeral and admitted Ryan had told him both parents had agreed. That was the end of the development plan. Without Maple Hollow to use as proof of wealth, Ryan's business began to show what had been hidden underneath. Several projects were behind schedule. Suppliers wanted payment. The mountain condo went back on the market. The boat disappeared from his social media. Madison moved with the children into her sister's house for several months. She never told me every detail and I did not ask. She did send one message. "I am sorry I recorded that dinner. I thought we were documenting your reaction, not his lie." I replied, "Thank you for saying that." I did not tell her it was fine. It was not. There is a difference between accepting an apology and erasing what made it necessary. By spring, Ryan had sold part of his company to a former partner. He told relatives I had ruined him by refusing to release family funds. That phrase traveled through the family group chat until Ben finally responded. "You already received your family funds." That was the problem. Ryan left the chat. For the first time, someone else had answered him before I felt responsible to. Meanwhile, Maple Hollow changed slowly. We repaired the 2 guest rooms above the barn. Marisol trained a new store manager. A retired nurse volunteered to stay overnight during caregiver weekends. A local diner agreed to provide meals. Dad's former students rebuilt the porch ramp and refused payment. We called the program Hollow Rest. I did not name it after my parents. I love them, but I did not want the place to become a shrine to suffering. I wanted it to feel like permission. The first guests arrived in June. One woman had been caring for her husband after a traumatic brain injury for 6 years. She slept 14 hours the first night. Another guest sat under the apple trees and cried because no one had asked her what she wanted for dinner in 3 years. A man caring for his mother with dementia kept checking his phone every 10 minutes. On the second day, he left it inside while he walked to the lower field. Watching them, I understood that caregivers are often praised in ways that keep them trapped. "You're so strong. I don't know how you do it. Your family is lucky to have you." Sometimes those sentences mean, "Please keep carrying what none of us plans to share." At Hollow Rest, we tried to say something different. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to need help. You are still a person when no one needs you for an hour. I began taking photographs again. Not for restaurant ads. I photographed the orchard in morning fog. Marisol laughing behind the cider counter, Dad's tools on the workbench, and guests drinking coffee without being interrupted. A small regional magazine published a story about the program. The article mentioned that Maple Hollow had been preserved by Tom and Linda Brooks and directed by their daughter Natalie. It did not mention Ryan. He emailed me the same day. "So this is the new version. You're the hero and I never existed." I read the message twice. Then I deleted it. I had spent years believing fairness required me to include Ryan in every story, even the ones he had abandoned. But acknowledging my own life was not erasing him. He had confused losing control with being forgotten. Almost a year after Thanksgiving, a letter arrived. 6 pages. Ryan wrote about pressure, Dad's favoritism, the collapse of his company, Madison's anger, and how humiliating it had been to watch the video in front of everyone. On page 5, he finally wrote, "I am sorry for how things happened. Not for what he did, for how things happened." The last paragraph asked whether I would let his children visit the orchard for family photographs. I placed the letter in Dad's metal cash box. I did not reply. I love my niece and nephew. I sent birthday gifts through Madison. I met them for lunch when she asked, but I would not reopen Maple Hollow as a stage for Ryan's image of himself. Forgiveness had become private. Access had become earned. Those were not the same thing. On the anniversary of Dad's death, I walked to the lower orchard just before sunset. The trees were heavy with fruit. The barn windows glowed behind me. Someone in the farmhouse kitchen was laughing. For the first time in years, a ringing phone did not make my heart jump. I thought about Mom's last message. Forgiveness does not require continued access. I had once believed cutting off my brother would make me bitter. Instead, it made room for grief that was honest. I grieved the brother I thought I had. I grieved the parents who loved me but took too long to understand how often they asked me to disappear. I grieved the years I spent calling exhaustion loyalty. And then slowly, I built a life that did not require me to be useful every minute in order to deserve a place in it. Ryan had tried to remove me from the family table. What he actually removed was the last reason I had to keep sitting where I was disrespected. That Thanksgiving, I thought the most powerful thing in the room was the video our parents left behind. I was wrong. The most powerful thing was the word I finally said after it ended. Yes. Yes, I am cutting you off. Yes, your choices can cost you access to me. Yes, I can love the memory of who you were and still refuse the person you choose to be now. Maple Hollow did not become my revenge. It became proof that a future can grow in the same place where someone tried to bury your name. And if a sibling publicly accused you, used your parents' illness against you, and only apologized after losing access to what they wanted, would you ever let them back into your life? Or are some family relationships only safe once the door stays closed?